This is the Pixel 4a, a phone that could be one of the best valued smartphones on the market, especially now that you can pick one up for $200. Welcome to Tech Rewind, the series where we take a look at some older devices to see if they're still worth your hard-earned cash. Now, today's video is all about Google's Pixel 4a, a nearly 2-year-old phone that I absolutely loved when it was released for its great design, excellent cameras, and even better price. But that was in 2020. A lot has changed since then, and the phone has gone through 2 major Android updates, so I think it's a good time to revisit the good old 4a and see if it's still just as good as I remember. It's time for Tech Rewind. The Pixel 4a is not a very flashy phone. It was originally released in a single just black color, and although they did come out with a barely blue color later on, the majority of the Pixel 4a's that you'll find on the used market right now will be in this matte black colorway. It is a rather subdued looking phone, but I'll tell you what, it is vastly more comfortable in the hand than most other phones. Part of that is because this phone is made out of a soft touch plastic material rather than all glass. That brings 2 benefits. 1, it makes the phone very light at 143 grams, and 2, it is much less prone to cracking or shattering when it's dropped. I remember being very happy with how this phone felt when I first started using it back in 2020, and I'm just as happy now. The other thing I remember distinctly were these buttons on the side. I don't think I've ever used a phone with more clicky buttons than this one. I do like the little minty green accent on the power button, but just listen to this. They're so loud. A couple of other notable mentions here design-wise is that the 4a has a rear-mounted fingerprint reader as opposed to one that's built into the power button or beneath the display glass, and the fact that this phone still has a headphone jack. That was rare for 2020, and it's even more rare now. I actually forgot this phone had one, and I was super surprised to see it when I pulled it out again. There's only one real downside to this 4a's design in terms of practicality, and that's the fact that it has not been IP rated for water or dust resistance, which is a little uncommon in mid-range phones for 2022, although it is seen a little bit more in the budget phones. All right, let's flip this phone over and move on to the display. This is a 5.8-inch 1080p OLED display, and for a budget mid-range phone, it is pretty solid. It doesn't have quite the same quality as a flagship phone though. I mean, there are a few issues here and there. It's got some slight rainbowing off axis, and then there's the obvious. The bezels and hole punch of this phone are pretty darn big, even by 2020 standards. The hole punch is in the corner, so it's not likely to really get in the way of watching videos or anything, but it does make the phone a little bit cheaper looking from the front. On the other hand, it is nice to see a smaller phone like this every now and again. At 5.8 inches, I find it very easy to reach all 4 corners, even with one hand. It's a sharp display too. It's only 1080p, but because the resolution has been shrunk down to a 5.8-inch screen, the pixel per inch count is decently high at 443. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is the cameras, the thing that Pixel phones have been renowned for over the years, and I'll get into that with some samples right after I thank the sponsor of this video, Ugreen. This is Ugreen's Nexode 100-watt charger, a device that can charge your laptop, your phone, your tablet, and pretty much anything else at the same time. It's got 3 USB-C ports and a USB-A port for charging, and it can charge all of your tech products. It uses GaN, or gallium nitride technology, meaning it can output a ton of power while staying cool. It's very small for a 100-watt charger too. It fits in the palm of your hand, and it would be the perfect thing to take on a trip with you, especially given the fact that this plug folds in so that you can just tuck it into a backpack pouch. You can actually charge the iPhone 13 from dead to 60% in about 30 minutes, or fully charge a 16-inch MacBook Pro in an hour and a half. With its latest GaN chipset, it's about 3 times faster than the original iPhone charger, even if you've got other things plugged in and charging. Pick up the Ugreen Nexode today by using the link in the video description below, and thanks to Ugreen for sponsoring this part of the video. The Pixel 4a has 2 cameras in total, one 12.2 megapixel wide-angle camera in the rear, and one 8 megapixel front-facing camera. The camera hardware on this phone wasn't very impressive when it was released, and it's definitely not very impressive now either. The rear camera is the same IMX363 sensor we saw in every Pixel phone since the Pixel 2 in 2017. But Google's magic sauce has never been hardware, it's software, and as near as I can tell, it has improved since the last time I shot with this camera. In true Pixel fashion, photos are sharp and very contrasty with good colors most of the time. If photography is very important to you and you don't have a lot of money to just drop on a phone, the Pixel 4a is one of the easiest recommendations I can make to you. It's not going to be the best camera on a phone out there, but you'd have a very hard time finding a better one for the same amount of money. The worst thing I can comment on about the Pixel 4a's photographic capabilities is actually the time it takes to finish processing a photo after capturing it. Most phones will allow you to see the final image like immediately after taking the photo, but with the Pixel 4a, there's some waiting involved, and that has a lot to do with the lack of processing power within this phone. The Pixel 4a has a Snapdragon 730G CPU and 6 gigs of RAM. The 730G was definitely not a flagship chip when it first came out. It was very budget-oriented, a kind of middle-of-the-road CPU that didn't have a lot of power. That's not to say that the Pixel 4a is a terribly sluggish phone, but at least in my experience, it isn't terribly fast either. Most day-to-day tasks will handle just fine on the 4a. It might bog down slightly every now and again or drop some frames, especially when you're playing games, but you probably aren't going to want to throw your phone at the wall because it freezes up all the time. That doesn't really happen. It just feels a little bit slower than I'm used to. The upside is that the Snapdragon 730G is a very power-efficient CPU. I remember having great battery life on the 4a back in 2020, and not much has changed in that regard, even running Android 12. The thing I will caution you about, though, is the fact that the 4a does have a pretty small battery overall at, I think, 3140 milliamp hours. In my experience, phones with smaller batteries tend to die out faster when they get old or when they have a high cycle count. So if you're looking for a used one of these, just try and find one that looks like it hasn't seen much use. On the other hand, small batteries do charge quicker than big ones. The Pixel 4a is capable of 18-watt fast charging through the USB-C port, which doesn't seem too quick in an age where phones are coming out with like 120-watt fast charging. But hey, it'll fully charge your phone in about an hour and a half, which isn't bad. Unfortunately, this phone does not have a coil inside for charging your phone on a wireless charging pad. I suspect that was one of the things that Google did to keep the costs on this phone down, in addition to the mid-tier CPU and plastic frame. But that takes us very neatly to the price. The Pixel 4a was a $350 phone at launch, which was a fantastic price at the time, and now that price has dropped to about $200 on the used market. These phones will still hold their value fairly well because honestly, they're a pretty darn good buy even now. At the end of every Tech Rewind episode, I rank each phone from A+ at the top and F at the very bottom, and the Pixel 4a with its excellent cameras, great display, and solid design gets an A from me. It might not be a flagship phone, but there's a lot to love about it. If you like this video, I highly recommend you check out this Tech Rewind episode where I take a look back at the 4a's slightly more high-end brother, the Pixel 4. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day.